When I was 13, I got really into anime, manga, cosplay, and nerdy stuff in general. I made new friends very quickly, and through them I got to know this 19-year-old Neckbeard. We became friends because of our mutual interests, and quickly discovered that we liked a lot of the same shows. I also found out that he was into lollies. Like, really into lollies. He is still an all-out and proud lolicon, which is probably why he was attracted to me. I am only 5'1", and with 13 years old, my body was not developed at all, so I still looked like a little kid. I know that I should have seen this as a red flag, but for the first time I thought I had real friends, so I did not want to mess this up. A few weeks into our friendship, I made the mistake of opening up a bit about my mental health to said Neckbeard. I was bullied at school, had problems with my family, and have been in therapy for my depression and anxiety. He very quickly made this about himself and told me his sad story of a heart disease, which turns out he never actually had. He told me he was diagnosed with it a few years ago and that his heart would just suddenly stop beating. I felt terrible for him, so I tried to cheer him up as best as I could, and oh boy, did he take advantage of that. Whenever I did something that he did not like, he told me that his heart was racing and hurting and that he had to sit down for a moment to calm down. If that didn't work, he threatened me with suicide or self-harm. To this day, I have no idea how it even came to that point, but I started living for him. He always told me that he was such a worthless human being and that I was the only good thing in his life. He didn't deserve love, and if he would not have me, he would have committed suicide already. My emotional support was not enough for him anymore. We regularly saw each other at conventions where he literally would not stop touching me. I'm totally okay with a hug as a way of saying hello or goodbye, but he would not leave me alone, hugging me from behind when I was talking to friends, taking my hands, playing with my hair, and he even put me on his lap. I hated it, but I also thought I had to do it or else he would kill himself and it would be my fault. This all went on for a few more months, and shortly before I turned 14, which is the age of consent where I'm from, he went from just touching to kissing my cheek, and he even went down my neck. Thankfully, it never went further than that, since that would have been statutory rape, and he knew that. And God forbid, if I ever told him to stop, he would stop. Then he would either ignore me for days, or he would stare at me with his pathetic victim stare for the rest of the convention, which made me really uneasy, so uneasy, in fact, that I still dream about it. He literally started controlling my life at this point, even though he lived around 2 hours away from me. I barely went to school anymore because he demanded I stay up to talk to him. I had to ask for permission to see other people at conventions. I was not allowed to meet up with friends from my hometown anymore, etc. I know that I was stupid and naive, but I was also just 13 who suddenly had to carry another person's life on her back. Eventually, one of the few friends I had left sat me down and we had a deep conversation about him. She kind of forced me to break off all contact with him, which I'm still so thankful for, but that was easier said than done. I had to decide either sacrifice my own happiness just for him to have a chance at life, or to be selfish and have him commit suicide. No one should ever have to think like that, especially not at such a young age. I chose my own happiness, though, and he showed up at my doorstep the next day to apologize. He knew my address because he was also good friends with one of my neighbors, who he sometimes visited. After I shut the door on him, he threw himself on the floor and had a temper tantrum like a 4-year-old. He never committed suicide, but still just lives on without a job or any kind of future in mind. The worst thing about all of this is probably the fact that my brain tried blocking it all out. I knew that something bad had happened and that I absolutely despised being touched by anyone after everything happened, but I never realized just how bad it was. After something similar triggered me a few days ago, I suddenly remember everything, and now I feel absolutely disgusted with myself. I feel like I should have known better because I've always been labeled as a smart kid, but now I cannot even look at myself. And why is that? Because I still feel horrible after what I've done. I feel like I ruined this person's life, and because of me, he will always be unhappy. I still have the desire to help him in me, but I know that I will just ruin myself even more. Now that even my own family can touch me, I am incredibly afraid of ever getting into a relationship. I hate my body because it baited him, and I want to completely change the way that I look. What did I learn from it, though? Helping your friends is amazing, but you don't owe anyone shit. Also, before anyone comes from my parents, they did not know anything. They knew that we were friends, but nothing more than that. I always blamed my mood on my depression. Sum it up, Neckbeard emotionally manipulated me and threatened with suicide if I did not do everything he wanted, threw a temper tantrum when I broke off contact, and now not even my own family can touch me. So I kind of come from a bit of a complicated situation. I don't want to go into too much detail because, one, I want to respect the privacy of those involved, and two, I do not want to be called a Debbie Downer by posting a really depressing backstory. My dad is an abusive, narcissistic, pathological liar who I think fits the general idea of a neckbeard. Because of this, my mom left him before she even knew I existed. Please do not ask about the timeline here, as it involves some very sensitive information. For various reasons, the divorce took 3 years to finalize. 4 if you want to count my mom's pregnancy. My dad had won the partial custody over my older brother and I, and my mom, who was our primary guardian, moved us to a small village on the border of the country. She literally ran and hid us. Her advice is that running from your problems does not work. Anyway, I was fortunate enough to not have been involved with my dad during my early childhood, but that changed due to the 2008 financial crisis. My mom lost her job and could not pay rent, and we had no choice but to move back in with my grandparents. This means that I was close enough to my dad that I had to visit him every weekend. He was not the classic anime waifu and fedora neckbeard. Instead, he was obsessed with that Star Wars MMO game. I do not know the name of it, and I don't really care, but if you're interested, I'm sure you could Google it easily. Instead of Mountain Dew, he drank Coca-Cola, about a dozen cans a day. He said something about having low blood sugar and needed to drink some sodas to keep it up. I do not know if there is a case in which there could be true, but one time he broke his leg, and the nurse who made a home visit told him that his blood sugar was dangerously high. He still did not change his story despite everyone knowing the truth. He was morbidly obese with buzz cut and an actual neckbeard. I'm fine with giving more examples, but for now, I just want to get into what's actually like being raised by one of these guys. I was the second oldest of his 6 children and his eldest daughter. I was expected to do the cooking, the cleaning, take care of the kids. Fun fact, an 8-year-old being forced to learn how to raise a 6-month-old baby on their own really kills the idea of them having kids in the future. And I was even punished on behalf of my younger siblings. My half-brother had ADHD, and he often misbehaved since the environment could not give him the attention he needed, and if anything was damaged, it was always my fault for not paying him enough attention. There was also a huge sense of food insecurity that to this day still affects me. We were allowed 1 singular Pop-Tart in the morning, half a pack of ramen for lunch, and during dinner, we had to follow this weird system. The adults get food first, and then the kids got food in order from youngest to oldest. By the time it got to my brother and me, there was barely ever anything left. It was seriously ridiculous to the point that we needed some permission just to drink tap water. The house was always a huge mess. It was infested with mice, roaches, head lice, and mold. No one ever walked the dogs, so there was often urine and feces everywhere too. My brother and I had to sleep on the floor, so waking up next to a literal piece of shit was always nice. Of course, it was my job to clean up. Even the crystallized urine around the toilet from my dad's lack of ability to aim. Without gloves, and only a thin scrubby and some water. It was seriously so gross. But no matter what it was, I had to do it. It was my responsibility as a woman of the house. My role was completely and totally subservient to my dad, and anyone can tell that he liked knowing that I was below him. A few years later, my mom remarried and moved out of state. That meant I got to spend my high school years neckbeard free. He still contacts me from time to time, but never in person. The biggest instance would be how I had to drop out of college since he harassed me to the point of getting a disease, and I could not afford both the hospital fees and my tuition. I have a lot of regrets about that, but I was able to find a paid housed apprenticeship, which I'll be able to officially start once the pandemic is over. Due to civic laws and the custody agreement, I cannot declare independence from my dad until I'm 21, but since that's in less than 6 months, I don't think that's too long of a wait. I am considering suing him at some point, but for now, I just want to get back on the right track. Summing up, neckbeards do not make good parents. Edit. People are sending me and my mom screenshots of him on Tinder. The dislocated walnut of a failing human being is cheating, and wow, his profile says he's an honest, devoted father. Oh, he also identifies as poly now. But looking at the situation as a whole, my stepmother is completely unaware of this. I do not like her very much, but she does not deserve it. Call yourself poly all you want. The second you start a relationship that not everyone is consenting is just cheating.